This podcast is brought to you by Sway Group, a full-service influencer marketing agency. Sway Group specializes in matching brands with the right influencers and creating the kind of branded content people actually pay attention to. For over 12 years, they've been helping businesses just like yours hit their goals with top-notch content strategies. They've got a network of over 45,000 diverse influencers. They don't shy away from challenging campaigns, and they're masters of authentic storytelling. Basically, they've got you covered when it comes to getting your brand in front of the right people. Head over to swaygroup.com and check them out.
Welcome to The Art of Sway, the podcast that uncovers the power of influence and its impact on all areas of our lives. I'm your host, Danielle Wiley. Each week, we'll explore the many facets of influence through candid conversations with industry insiders, from brand marketers to social workers, educators, leaders, and more. Let's dive in. Dr. Marcus Collins is an award-winning marketer and cultural translator. He is the former head of strategy at Wheaton Kennedy, New York, and a clinical assistant professor of marketing at the Ross School of Business, University of Michigan. He is also the author of the book For the Culture, published this past summer. Marcus is a recipient of Advertising Age's 40 Under 40 Award and an inductee into the American Advertising Federation's Advertising Hall of Achievement. Most recently, he was recognized by Thinkers 50 and Deloitte among their class of 2023 radar list of 30 thinkers with the ideas most likely to shape the future. His strategies and creative contributions have led to the launch and success of Google's Realtone technology, the Made in America Music Festival, and the Brooklyn Nets, among others. Prior to his advertising tenure, Marcus worked on iTunes plus Nike sport music initiatives at Apple and ran digital strategy for Beyoncé. Marcus holds a doctorate in marketing from Temple University, where he studied social contagion and meaning making. He received an MBA with an emphasis on strategic brand marketing from the University of Michigan, where he also earned his undergraduate degree in material science engineering. He lives in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Since I moved to Ann Arbor 2 years ago, I've been doing everything I can to meet some of the smart people who also live here. And no surprise, many of these smart people are professors at the University of Michigan. 2 separate professors from the Ross School of Business at Michigan suggested I connect with Marcus, and I am so glad I took that advice. This was one of my favorite podcast episodes to date. I finished Marcus' book just a few days before we chatted, and by the time I was done, it was littered with Post-it notes of questions I had for him. I could have extended this podcast for twice the length we actually spoke, and I hope this is just the first of many conversations we have. Thank you so much for coming here today. I had a great time last week reading your book, which I'm actually not like a huge nonfiction business book reader. I listen to lots of interviews, but usually my reading is more of the trashy fiction variety. So it's a big compliment.
Well, it depends on if you liked it or not. That's the
I loved it. I loved it. And I've been recommending it.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I would love to start just by talking about your journey, because it was as I was reading about it, and then I listened to a podcast interview that you did, and it's kind of like the opposite of mine. So I found it really interesting because I majored in sociology because I went to a small school that didn't have marketing or communications, but I was very interested in marketing and communications. And the only department that had any classes that had any relevance whatsoever was the sociology department, which people are always confused by, and it makes no sense to them. But your book kind of like justified all of that, and it made me feel better about my sad little sociology degree that no one cared about. But you started in engineering and then kind of moved into the study of people and culture and sociology. And so tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, the majority of my theoretical repertoire sits in the world of sociology, which ironically was the only behavioral science course I took in undergrad. I took a Social 101 course that I don't even remember. It's terrible. But it's interesting. So to your point, I started off as an engineer because I thought I wanted to study polymers, carbon chains. And plus, I did well in math and science in high school. And in those days, if you did well in math and science and you were Black, you're going to be an engineer. So that's what I did. I don't think I've had much say in the matter.
Yeah.
Those are just the expectations. So that's what I did. Studied engineering undergrad. My first year, realized I didn't really love engineering. I thought it was interesting. I just wasn't interested.
Right.
I didn't see myself doing it for the rest of my life. So I came home and told my parents, I don't ever want to be an engineer. My parents talked me into like, no, keep going. By talk me into, I mean, big air quotes.
Right.
It was like, you gonna be an engineer. So like, okay. So I went back my sophomore year, really realized I didn't want to be an engineer. Again, I thought it was fascinating. And I thought like the phenomenal world in which we inhabit was really cool. I just didn't think about it all day long. It just wasn't what got me up in the morning. But I took some music theory courses and that did it for me. It's like, oh, this is the thing. Like major sevenths, modal mixtures. You're talking about modulations. Oh, give me that all day long. But unfortunately, my parents didn't share the same zeal that I did. When I told my parents I want to be a songwriter, they said, you must be smoking crack because that is not going to happen. No, sir. So I ended up finishing my degree in engineering, but spent all my time in the recording studio. If I wasn't in class or when I was supposed to be in class, I was in the recording studio at on campus at the University of Michigan. So when I graduated, I became a songwriter. I was writing, producing music for a living, and actually was making a living. Surprisingly, it was a modest living.
And they were okay with it then.
In their minds, they kept saying, "Engineering is always a backup."
Got it.
And that was the refrain that like you can always fall back on it. You always fall back on it. And I kind of told myself that too. It was a bit of like a safety net, if you will, sort of a life preserver that if it all goes away, I can always fall back on engineering. However, I realized after a few years, like if you haven't practiced the thing that you studied after a few years, you aren't that thing.
Yeah.
So if I was in the music industry for about 6 years before I decided to go back to school because I realized that engineering degree, it helped me learn how to think, but I was not an engineer and I certainly didn't have the practice of it. So I went to get my MBA because I realized there was a disruption in the music industry that I didn't know very well that we now know as digital.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that the music industry had more to do with business than music, right? The music business was more business than music. And while I loved music, I knew if I was going to stay in this industry, I had to understand the business. I didn't know the business at all.
Yeah.
So for me, this was about music, business, and digital. And marketing was the most creative way to do business in my mind, at least. So I said, I'll be a marketer. That makes sense. Right? That maths, So I went to school to get my MBA. Went to go work at Apple doing partner marketing for iTunes, which was amazing. This is the year following the launch of the iPhone, and Apple's just on fire.
Yeah.
Good night. Like iTunes is the de facto place for music consumption. iPhone was the coolest thing ever, and Apple was the brand. And I was right in the middle of it, which was amazing. I mean, I had a very small role, but right in the middle of it.
Still cool to be there.
Yeah, it's super cool to be there. And it was along that time that I met a guy named Matthew Knowles, who has a daughter named Beyoncé.
And he goes, I've heard of her.
Wait a minute. Yeah, she sings a few songs. Yeah. And he goes, wait a minute. Like, you are an engineer. You started a music company. You have an MBA. You work at iTunes and you're Black. Man, you are not real. Like, he thought I was lying. He was like, you're not real. And I was like, no, man, like, this is a real thing. And after some colorful conversations, he goes, you should run digital strategy for my company, which was the management organization and record label for Beyonce. And I go, oh yeah, I should definitely do that. Yeah. And this is around this is in the I Am Sasha Fierce years. So thinking, Put a Ring on It, Single Ladies, If I Were a Boy, Sweet Dreams, all this stuff. This is Beyonce moving from artist to queendom, right? To queen bee. And it was amazing. But 3 things I realized that I didn't know how to say it then, but became very clear for me over the years is that I didn't know how much of that success was due to anything I did. I mean, I couldn't look in the mirror and say, I'm really good at my job. Even though I had tons of success working with Beyonce, it was because of Beyonce. I don't think Beyonce's like,
that's so interesting. That's like such an interesting, that makes a ton of sense, but I wouldn't have landed
Beyonce
there,
was
but
like,
I
I
get
could
it.
not have done this without Marcus.
Just you wait.
So for me, I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm any good because the success that I'm experiencing, while I may have, made some small contribution, I don't know how much of it hinged on me. And that didn't sit that well with me. I wanted to have impact.
Yeah.
And the second thing is I thought about if I were to stay in the music industry, where do you go after work with Beyonce? Everything just felt like a step down, like no shade to anybody else.
Yeah.
But everything just felt like it was a downgrade to some degree or another. And I was like, that doesn't feel awesome. And then the third thing is that there were rumors that Beyonce was going to break off on her own and be self-managed, which she actually did. And I was like, oh man, I need to jump off the ship pretty fast, So I went into advertising because I thought that advertisers were doing a better job of breaking new artists than record labels were, than the music industry was. So, and not only that, but they were very much on the bleeding edge of these new technologies that we call social networking platforms. And I felt like they knew how to leverage music in really interesting ways. So I was like, that's where I'm going to go. And plus, if I'm being honest with you, Danielle, Mad Men was a really cool show at the time too. And I was like, I could be Don Draper minus the womanizing, drinking and smoking. I could do that. Like, that's kind of cool. So I went to work at an agency called Big Fuel, pure play social media agency. And for me, they had just acquired all the social media marketing business for General Motors. They were based in New York, but they were doing all of General Motors social. This was like $25 million retainer. Unbelievable. Just unheard of, unfathomable at that time for a social media agency to do that kind of work. So I went there and learned social, like learned the ins and outs, just kind of boot camp for social, if you will. And while I was there, I met a gentleman named Steve Stout. And Stout was sort of the encapsulation of what I thought I wanted to be. Here's a guy who legendary in the music industry, music executive, who went to build an agency called Translation with his partners, Jimmy Iovine and Jay-Z. And I go, that guy is the guy I want to be. Music guy in advertising, legends in two games like Pee Wee Kirkland. I go, that guy. And he says, hey, I'm looking for someone to build a social practice in our organization and lateralize that thinking across all our clients. I go, oh man, I'm your Huckleberry. Let's do that. So I went to Translation, which was really, I would say, the biggest inflection point in my career. While Apple was awesome and loved Apple, and Beyonce is Beyonce, like she's amazing, but it's really my time at Translation that changed how I see the world and how I practice in the world. And I got a chance to touch these like massive campaigns.
That's what I was going to say. Like being at an agency, there's something about being able to touch multiple different accounts. That's and right. Like kind of seeing how they each approach things differently. And there's something about that education that you get kind of on the ground that it's hard. Other jobs can be so cool, but until you're in that agency environment, it's very unique.
Yeah, there's this social learning that takes place because you see sort of, the closest proxy to this would probably be the music industry in a lot of ways. And it's when there's a big studio and artists rent out different rooms. Yeah. And you walk by and you hear music from this artist and from that artist. You go, what y'all making over there? What's going on over there? And you get to actually go into the room and listen to it. And someone says, I have a, maybe change that word to this word. They go, oh, come in the booth and record that. Right. So you have to touch things, even though you're not on that account. Mm-hmm. You get to impact things, even though you were just walking by and saw a deck or saw a slide and said, you think about this. And that's a really cool thing that you get to learn through osmosis in a lot of ways, but also just because of the conversations that are happening in the hallway among your peers, you get to learn about how ideas came to be, the things that they're wrestling with, and also contribute to it. It's pretty awesome in a very, very unique way. And the agency world, particularly translation, provide that for me because we were looking at marketing communications with some of the biggest brands in the world, from Anheuser-Busch, AB InBev, that is, Google, State Farm, McDonald's, Target, and these massive brands who knew nothing about culture and wanted to tap into culture. I mean, that was the promise of the agency. This was about helping ambitious brands thrive in contemporary culture. And what I realized is that I was talking the talk. Like I was like, yeah, culture. I mean, if you think about this in culture and get our ideas out in culture and be informed by culture. But what I realized was that if you put 5 people in a room and ask them to define culture, you get 50 different answers. And I was probably one of those 5 people with 20 of those answers. And while I was talking the talk, I didn't really know what culture was because I didn't know anything about people. I was an engineer who slept through my social 101 course.
You needed me.
I needed you, Danielle. Where were you in my life? Those early times. And I didn't have that. And what I realized was that there wasn't a ton of rigor around that either. And I think that I know that that's what introduced me to the world of academia, because academics, we split hairs about words, constructs, we are meticulously interrogate the language that we use so that when you use a word, you better mean it, right? And therefore you know what it is. And as I started studying the behavioral sciences, I just saw that my work got infinitely better, right? With the Rosetta Stone, it allowed me to operationalize some of these things that scholars from the 1800s on who had, rigorously investigate these ideas were able to apply them with some meaningfulness. And that was just really, really awesome for me. And that became the second biggest inflection point of my career, which has been sort of the rocket ship that I've been on ever since.
As a person with a very deep voice, I'm hired all the time for advertising campaigns. But a deep voice doesn't sell B2B, and advertising on the wrong platform doesn't sell B2B either. That's why if you're a B2B marketer, you should use LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn has the targeting capabilities to help you reach the world's largest professional audience. That's right, over 70 million decision makers all in one place. All the big wigs, then medium wigs, also small wigs who are on the path to becoming big wigs. Okay, that's enough about wigs. LinkedIn ads allows you to focus on getting your B2B message to the right people. So, does that mean you should use ads on LinkedIn instead of hiring me, the man with the deepest voice in the world? Yes. Yes, it does. Get started today and see why LinkedIn is the place to be to be. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
Support for The Art of Sway and all the shows in the Marketing Podcast Network is provided by ActiveCampaign. If you are looking for a way to grow your business, you need to check out ActiveCampaign. It is a powerful marketing automation platform that can help you to increase your sales, improve your customer service, and build stronger relationships with your customers. With ActiveCampaign, you can create and send email campaigns, manage your leads and customers, create landing pages, set up automated workflows, and track your results all in one approachable platform. ActiveCampaign has over 10,000 five-star reviews on G2 from happy users. Preview Me is one. They're a B2B software company that uses ActiveCampaign to send their prospective customers highly visual and personalized emails as they progress through CRM stages such as completing a demo. This has increased their click-through rates 96%. If you are serious about growing your business, you need to check out ActiveCampaign. Try it today for free and see how it can help you to achieve your goals. For a limited time, ActiveCampaign is offering Art of Sway listeners a chance to double your contacts for free when you sign up at activecampaign.com/activate. That means if your email list has 10,000 contacts, you only need to pay for 5,000. Or you can pay for the 10,000 and get an extra 10,000 totally free. Personalize your customer experience, but do it with automation, just like 185,000 businesses have at ActiveCampaign. Go to activecampaign.com/activate to sign up today. That's activecampaign.com/activate. Terms and conditions apply.
Yeah. So
One of the things that really brought kind of the study of culture home to me while reading your book, I loved the whole tribe model thing. I mean, and some of it is being in Ann Arbor, and my husband went to Michigan, and my daughter's there, and my son's starting in August, and
Awesome.
we go to all the games. So
Yeah.
like have definitely drunk the Kool-Aid. But I loved that section of your book. And you talked about taking your students through it. And I wondered if you could take our listeners through it, and feel free to use the Michigan example because it's
absolutely
excellent.
So the idea is that, we think about people, we describe people as an industry, as marketers. We put them in these boxes that don't accurately represent who they are. They're typically demographic in nature: age, race, gender, household income. But the thing is that people don't self-identify by that. We self-identify by our cultural subscriptions, by our people, our communities, our tribes, our congregations. And you think about that, you go, well, yeah, isn't that like is that sort of a nuanced, subtle difference? And I go, no, it makes all the difference in the world. Because of who we are, we see the world a certain way and then behave in the world a certain way. For instance, I'm a Collins. We believe family and church come first. Therefore, Sunday mornings, I'm in the church sanctuary. Why? Because that's what people like me do. That's what Collinses do, right? I'm a Michigan Wolverine. We believe we're the best school ever. I suppose it's debatable. I suppose. Maybe. But that's what we believe, right? One thing's for sure is we believe the worst school on the planet is Ohio State, right? Like that's just what we believe. Yep. And because of that belief system, as soon as you matriculate, your identity changes, right? As soon as you matriculate to come to school saying, I'm going to be at the University of Michigan, your identity becomes, I am now a part of this community. And therefore you adopt the cultural characteristics or the social facts, as Durkheim puts it, that govern what it means to be in this community. So it's like, oh, we hate Ohio State. I guess I hate Ohio State too, right? Like that's just kind of what happens. And the same thing happens at Ohio State, right? They hate Michigan. Yep. So you go, I'm Ohio State Buckeye. I guess I hate Michigan now. Like this is just what we do. And the interesting part is that like many people are just indifferent about other schools. Like I was indifferent about Ohio State until I got here. My identity dictates how I see the world and ultimately how I show up in the world, right? But now that I'm a professor at the University of Michigan, my identity has shifted again in that I don't have any disdain for Ohio State. I mean, I may say it jokingly, but I'm not. I'm kind of indifferent. Well, why is that?
Right.
Because I look at Ohio State that they're just an institution for higher learning, right? And I've seen some of the research come out of Ohio State, and they're smart people. Fancy that? No, I'm joking. they're smart people there, right? It's in every institution of higher learning has really smart people there who have gone through the academy, who have had peer-reviewed work put in the world. Like it's ridiculous to say they're a bad school. That doesn't make any sense at all. And it's because of my identity as a professor that I see the world in a more subjective way. And therefore, my cultural behaviors are different, i.e. Ohio State is fine by me, right? I don't say it in front of a lot of Michigan alum.
Except the Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it's so interesting that our worldview can shift so dramatically by changing our identity, by the shift in our identity. And the better we understand that, I think the more that we become better practitioners as marketers, but also we become better citizens of the world, that we realize that we're not operating by any sort of fixed truths, but that everything in the world around us is subjective and socially constructed. And then we go, oh, okay, cool. Like then these things can be delegitimated or further legitimated based on discourse, which I think is really powerful.
I've been thinking a lot about, I mean, obviously tribes have existed forever, and you give that first example of being a Collins, and certainly that doesn't require any kind of social media connection for that to be a thing. But just thinking back on my life and kind of as social media has grown, for me at least, that's such a huge part of the tribes that I'm in. Like I remember before I had kids a long time ago, like I was in AOL message boards for people who had Weimaraners because I had a Weimaraner, right? And like that became my thing. And then I had kids and I was in a Yahoo message board for people who were due November of 2001 because that's when my daughter was due. And like just finding, and now all my tribes are like Facebook groups, mostly Peloton related, and like those morph. Like I was in Peloton moms, and then they got a little sketchy. So then it was like Peloton working moms, and then that like there's some like weird stuff going on there. So then I ended up in progressive Peloton working moms. Like it just kept narrowing and getting, like where do I go that doesn't have Trumps? Okay. And like you find your way there. And I'm just curious as to your thoughts as to how social media, like as I said, tribes have been around forever, but how do you see social media as like, has it created more, or has it just made it easier to find lots of them?
Well, I typically think about social through the lens of Marshall McLuhan, right? So he's a sociologist and he's really a theorist, right? Philosopher who studied the relationship between technology and human behavior. And McLuhan would argue that technology merely extends human behavior, right? So like the wheel is extension of the foot, clothes are extensions of the skin, glasses are extensions of the eyes, light is extension of the day, right? Like, and cameras are extension of our memory, and social networking platforms, by that logic, are merely extensions of our real life social networks, right? I think about this when I went to my 20-year high school reunion. I expected to be like all the TV shows, but I would show up and be like, Marcus, what have you been up to? Oh my goodness, you look so different. Oh, you used to have hair. Oh my God. Like I expected that because that's what Saved by the Bell would tell me. Like that's like all the shows I watch. Like that's what the cultural production told me what your 20-year high school reunion was going to be. But when I got there, instead, I went with my wife and my eldest daughter, only daughter at the time, Georgia. When we got there, people were like, oh my goodness, Georgia, you're so cute. How was your vacation? I just saw you guys were in LA last week. I love your talk on X, Y, and Z. Like what normally would be a natural decay in relationships had created a long tail, right? The decay had declined. That's what social networking platforms do. They extend human behavior. So when you think about the Peloton group you're in, you go, Peloton moms, great. These people are like me. Then you go, oh, not all these people. Let me go find a more specific tribe within this congregation of Peloton riders that are more like myself. And then you go, oh, well, they're a little weird. They're a little sketchy. These people are more like a progressive Peloton mom. These are my people. And that's how we navigate life in general. You come to the University of Michigan as a freshman, you go, these are my people. We're all Michigan students. Then you go, not these folks, not that folks, not them. Oh, but them. Then you hang out with them and you go, Greek life. This is where I'm supposed to be. And you go, well, not that fraternity, not this fraternity. That fraternity is more like me. This is how we navigate life. We are wired to be tribal, right? And tribes aren't massive populations. They're smaller communities. Right? We're meant to live that way. And it's these technological explosions that not only extend human behavior, but in some ways exacerbates it, right? You see it in consumption. You see it in massive populations, right? Like that didn't exist until before the Industrial Revolution. I mean, these technological breakthroughs, they have both negative and positive consequences. And we as human beings, we're wired to act a certain way, and that's what we do predictably.
Yeah. One of the things I loved a lot about your book, but I loved how you gave kind of that real world instructions on how to learn more about a culture. And you talked about starting with Twitter advanced search, which maybe if Threads can add search in there, transition to Threads, like Twitter advanced search, and then going in to Reddit. And I've just been thinking a lot about how searching has changed for us. Like over the weekend, we were trying to rally to go to Eastern Market. And instead of Googling, I went to TikTok and I put in Detroit Eastern Market, and I found like video tours and people checking it out. And I found people who liked grabbing the treats and the pastries. And then I found people who were getting flowers, and you could like really find what your experience might be like and live it in a way that it was so much deeper, and like you got the culture of it so much more than you would from a Google search and just reading some article about it.
I mean, that's it's so unbelievable. Man, I love that. Right. We've seen search traffic just skyrocket for TikTok.
Yeah.
People use TikTok as a search engine, and it of course has ramifications on Google. But I think even the way you put it, that like you described all these all the stimuli about the Eastern market, and you said as opposed to just getting an article. And which says to me the difference is that we want stories as opposed to information, which makes sense because we're storytelling animals, and we typically exchange information, humans, as stories, right? Like I don't say, hey, Danielle, what did you do on your trip? Well, let me give you my itinerary, Marcus.
Right.
You go, oh man, like, you know what? It was so awesome. Like, first of all, like I didn't want to wake up in the morning, but because I slept so late. And like we tell these narratives, right? That's how we are used to communicating. And TikTok provides narratives, not facts,
right,
but narratives. And that becomes a really powerful and vivid way of getting information, because that's what we're wired to do. And I think that is the irony of it all, in my mind at least, is that there's so much technology at our disposal, but the best technology help us be us. They help us be ourselves.
Yeah.
So more vehicles to help tell better stories become ways by which we become more human.
I love that. I love that angle. There's so much negativity out there, but there's a lot that's good about social media, at least.
I mean, there's bad to everything. Like from the beginning of time, we had Cain and Abel, but we also had the Garden of Eden.
Right.
That's amazing, right? Like it's like there's good and bad to everything. And I think that when you see the world through that lens, you realize that the decisions we make as marketers, as human beings, as leaders, as managers, we make trade-offs.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, so we are always telling our clients that they need to put aside, we use this term buckets of money just because I like the visual of it. And we're always telling them we know that you're going to spend this much on influencer marketing in 2023, but let's not allocate all of it. Let's leave some buckets aside for things that come up. Like we had a client who jumped on water talk on TikTok a couple of months ago because they had money set aside and it made sense for them. I'd love for you to tell the Farmland Supreme story, because I felt like that, like I want to send it to all my clients. I can think of no better way to demonstrate to that. Like that would have never happened if they didn't have the financial kind of leeway to jump on it.
That's right. And it didn't cost a terrible amount of money either. What's that saying that, you should keep $1,000 in savings just in case, right? Just in case money, right? And I think that when it comes to marketing communication, you got to leave a little bit of just in case money, right? Because there will be opportunities that are either we have to save ourselves or this could be game changing for us. I mean, that was the case with Farmland. So Farmland is a Kansas City pork manufacturer. And most people, if you ask them, don't have great unaided awareness of Farmland, right? If you show them the logo, they go, oh yeah, I think I've seen it in my grocer, maybe, right? But people know what Supreme is. New York streetwear brand, one of the biggest streetwear brands there is. And typically those brands have nothing to do with each other, absolutely nothing. However, a few years ago, Supreme decided to steal the logo of Farmland to be affixed on their newest streetwear drop. And typically in those cases, brands will go, oh, that's an IP infringement issue. Let's litigate. But somehow or another, and I haven't figured this out yet, but Supreme dodges every single lawsuit that comes their way. I mean, their actual logo was stolen from Barbara Kruger. Like, how is this even a thing? But somehow or another, those lawsuits just kind of roll off of Supreme's back. And so most brands, when they see any infringement, they do nothing, because what are you going to do? It's Supreme. However, for us, we said, no, we're going to do something about this, right? So when one of the guys on the team, a guy named Nick Navetta, when he saw that their newest drop had our logo, had our client's logo, we went straight to the client. The client was sort of like a little slowful on it. And what actually changed the client's mind is that their kid said, "This is going to be the coolest thing you'll ever do. You got to do this." And what we decided to do was tweet back at Supreme after their drop, saying, "Hey, we missed the drop. You want to send a couple pair our way?" And they didn't say anything. So at Supreme's next drop, we decided to make a lookbook of our own, a streetwear lookbook that took our farmers all gussied up in Supreme gear in their natural environment on the farm, right? With all like it looked like hype beasts that were like lifting up hay and milking cows. And the internet went crazy, particularly the community of hype beasts. And it didn't cost a lot of money, but it required resources to go buy the Supreme gear, to go send the agency out to go take photos, to get it pressed up and then get it out in the world. And I think that like for a brand that no one was talking about, Farmland, I mean, immediately we just saw just a hockey stick growth in search traffic as well as conversations. And that's something that Farmland couldn't even buy if they had the media dollars to do it.
Yeah.
Like only culture can drive that, or cultural exchanges can drive that sort of wake. I think that should be, to your point, inspiring for a lot of brands who go, "Who's going to talk about my brand? It's not cool. It's not whatever." It's like, well, it's not about you. It's about the community.
Right.
Like,
and the community's not planning a year. And if, like I talked to so many clients and I'm like, well, we're going to start our 2024 planning in September and we'll have it locked in by end of November before the Christmas holidays. And it's, how do you even know what's going to happen in 2020? Like,
that's right.
No one knew Threads was coming. No one
no.
Yeah.
Elon Musk definitely didn't know it was coming.
So delightful.
It is kind of awesome. It's kind of awesome. But you're right. Like, I think the idea for brands like Supreme and a brand like Farmland and other ones that may seem sleepy or not conspicuous, to me, I think that I included that in the book, not only because it was so successful, but it was also like, culture isn't reserved for only the Nikes of the world. They're not reserved just for the Apples of the world, but like every brand could be a part of culture. Why? Because every brand wants to be a part of people, and culture is the governing operating system of people. So it's not about how cool your brand is. It's more so about how does your brand facilitate these tribal communities, right? That's how you participate in culture, by contributing to it. And for Farmland, we participate in the cultural discourse, not saying, "Hey, our value propositions are so great. Look how thick our bacon slices are." Instead, we contribute to it in a way that we had license to be a part of it,
right.
And also contribute to it in a way that was apropos to the discourse that was happening in the community.
Love it. Love it. I could talk to you for another half hour, but we sadly don't have the time. But I would love, so we're ending every conversation this season with the same question,
okay.
Which is, what was the last thing that you were influenced to watch, buy, listen to, or read?
Oh, last thing was influenced to watch would have to be The Bear.
Oh, so good.
So I haven't seen it. Apparently my wife is on season 2 with that, unbeknownst to me. And I think that's sort of what does it. We were 4th of July barbecue with some friends, and someone said, "Oh, are you watching The Bear?" And I go, "I don't even know what this thing is." And I was like, "I've seen Cocaine Bear. Are we talking about that?" Like, no. The show called The Bear. And I go, "What's it all about?" And my wife was like, "It's so good." And I'm like, "You Tate Brutus? You too?" Like, I didn't even know.
That's so funny with couples. I was watching Never Have I Ever, the Mindy Kaling show, and it was the last, season 5, and I was on like episode 7, and my husband came upstairs and he said, "You're on season 5, episode 7 of some show I never. What life do you have?"
Right.
I don't know.
I felt so betrayed by my wife, but it was interesting that like everyone at the table had seen it. and we're talking about how awesome it was.
So good.
And it wasn't just like how well the show was made. They were speaking about the show through these different cultural references. And this is what makes cultural production so contagious, is that when there are multiple redundancies of people doing a thing, our people in particular doing a thing, we go, oh, I guess I should be doing it also. And as a result, we adopt behavior.
Yeah.
And now I'm on season 1 because my wife and my friends, group of friends, are watching The Bear and having conversations about The Bear without me, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I'm jealous. I'm jealous that you have it all in front of you because it was awesome.
See, and now another friend telling me I should be watching the show. That's why I'm on it.
There you go. Well, thank you so much. This was wonderful. And well, we're so close. So hopefully I can have you on again, or maybe even grab a cup of coffee. But it was great meeting you. And again, I loved your book and hope everyone will grab a copy.
Thank you so very much. Coffee is a must.
Yes.
And love to be back whenever you'd have me.
Awesome. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please check back next Monday for a new episode featuring candid conversations that explore the power of influence. I am your host, Danielle Wiley, and this is The Art of Sway.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? T. Adeola hosts a great podcast called Tiny Giants. T, tell us what these fine folks will get out of listening.
We are the creator economy show that's about careers, not celebrity. Right? So who should listen to this show are the parents of young people who want to know more about the creator economy and why that's a career path for their children, or the young people themselves.
Amazing. Where can the young people or the parents subscribe?
You can find us at tinygiants.tech or wherever you get these podcasts, these fine podcasts. And you can also find us at the Marketing Podcast Network, which is marketingpodcast.net.
You heard him. Go subscribe.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.